think we are all set to go. Thanks again.
My computer is a little struggling. It a couple weeks ago, I don't know what happened. It started to slow down, started to act up. Some weird things happened to the files. I don't know if I fat fingered something before I shut down. Anyway, I got that settled a couple weeks ago with the files, and now it's just been wonky. Like there's one app where the icons are they won't show up on the sidebar of the app, and just really weird stuff has been happening. The keyboards, like my Bluetooth keyboard, would have like just weird things happening with the USB drivers, and just like all of a sudden it wasn't, keys weren't matching up. So I had to go hardwire keyboard. And then it was just super slow earlier this week, a couple days ago. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do what I should have done a while ago, which is get the hard drive backup, get the 4 terabyte hard drive backup, you mount it and format it, and available to take backups, because I gotta wipe this OS and or upgrade right to 15.3. So I'll be going to the latest and greatest version of OpenSUSE, my friend.
Oh, all right, excellent. 15 for OpenSUSE. That sounds really awesome.
15,
yeah, that's probably, I mean, for sure, right? If you do a clean install, I would imagine that would absolutely solve these issues.
And I have a very small, like my lean and mean machine too. So I'm probably just going to reinstall all the apps fresh, right? Like I'll probably just go through that real quick. Browser's backed up. So yeah, man, looking forward to that, so I get the backup system set up, have that going. So it's the old adage, from every situation that doesn't look, so pleasant, you're gonna learn something. So I'm gonna back up my data.
Yeah, back up everything.
Back up my data in-house. Yeah.
You might have some luck to start off with uninstalling Teams. I wouldn't be surprised if Teams is causing conflicts and issues. Otherwise, all the other software that we use, assuming that you're using the same kind of software I am, works fine. It's really Teams.
Jim, that's not a bad idea. Jim, that's not a bad idea, actually, before I go ahead and, I'll back it all up, but still, yeah.
I've been building machines for since 94, so almost 30 years, 28 years. I used to have one of the earliest Linux companies, VA Linux. We had the largest IPO in history in 1999. I was worth $11 million on December 9th, 1999.
Whoa!
Yep. It was the height of the dot-com period, and it took place 3 months after the Red Hat IPO, so it was double in size. And I think Snowflake is actually higher than that now. They hold the record. But we used to get a lot of loaner machines to sell Linux, and we'd get them back, and we, meaning my engineers and I, we would just take out all the best parts and build these monster, super monster machines. And, with the latest processors and extra fans and big disks and all kinds of cool stuff. So yeah, I have a sense, even though I'm in sales, I do have a pretty decent technical sense of when things are working and when they're not. So I hope that helps.
Absolutely, man. You having fun?
I am. I'm really glad to be here. Here in my seat, where are my feet? I'm right here. I'm glad to be on this call with you. I really just want to thank you again, because, it really is important work, what you're doing. In fact, I listened to a different Meaning Wave cast from a couple of weeks ago. I'll think of it in just a second, but you've really been able to achieve a lot of
Oh, we got.
Sorry, that was.
You must be. I knew you were searching. I didn't know you were going to forget to mute it. That's funny.
But yeah, I'm just trying to figure out. Well, there was the introduction to crypto. This is a while back, but it was a new one,
the most recent one. Yeah. The Wave Riders to.
Yeah, Riders Wild. Yeah, I was really interested in that, and just got a lot of content here. Wait a minute. Your baptism took place?
Yeah.
Wow, look at this. This was the day after my birthday. I didn't
Oh,
know.
that's
Oh my
cool.
gosh, this is tremendous. What a big deal this was. Holy
Absolutely.
smoke. I mean, for anybody listening, it's like, what are you guys looking at? Looking at a video of Joe getting baptized in a tub just exactly 1 month ago today.
Oh,
And
wow.
this is tremendous. So, what do you make of that? Like, what is your wow, that is really incredible. I mean, it's a big deal. I know very well that this is a big deal.
It's not a
What does
small
that mean?
deal, that's for sure. Yeah. So now listen, it's all part of the journey. We're talking heavy transformation, people, right? I mean, one of the things I don't talk too much about um, is the men's group I'm a part of, and my affinity for men, getting outside their comfort zone, building each other up emotionally, right? Not by
Hmm.
beating each other up.
Hmm.
So, yeah, no, what's it about and what's it mean to me? It means, I'm continuing to confront the things that I've been hesitant or fearful of confronting, and maybe confronting is not a good word, experiencing. So that's what
Yeah,
it
yeah,
means.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I know that's high level, that's surface, right? But yeah, that's what it means.
I really like what you just said. Experience over what was the word that you chose not to use? Encounter. It was a, but your
C word, I forget
it's
as well.
the word. It's because it's much more positive. And I also do my very best to curate my thoughts because it's so easy to complain. It's so easy to be cynical all day long, right? Whether it's at work or with our friends or whether it's about money or whatever, the economy or the future, you name it. It is really easy to be pessimistic and negative, and the absolute priority is to be positive, is to find that silver lining, is to say verbally uh, the uh, the blessing, the silver lining, or the positive part, the glass half full perspective, because that's everything, man. Whatever is in your head becomes true. This is the part that people start to now all of a sudden get fuzzy, and they're like, "Oh, let me get a cup of coffee. I'm going to dismiss this. What does that mean? Everything I think is true. Okay, whatever. I'm going to move on." No, people have to pay attention right now. What is in your head becomes true, becomes real, often manifests in physical reality. I mean, have you ever noticed that?
Always manifests in physical reality,
Always,
right?
all.
Always manifests in physical reality. People are coming onto this, right? People are coming onto this mind over matter and what it means and how you can control it, right? So yeah, people are coming onto it. So you're right. Pay attention. Um, I'm deep in the Bible. I'm deep in prayer, and the hardest part is action, right? And I think that's
You
what
know,
it's all about. That's what it's all. That's
I was. Yep.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. There I was, like
No,
trying to.
go ahead. No,
I,
please go ahead. I want you to go because I don't know where I'm going.
the interruption etiquette is something that I really need to get better at. Uh,
I, that one
but
was appropriate though. Run with it.
well, it is what you say, and it what is the thoughts that are in your head, the pictures that you paint in your mind get amplified with emotion. I mean, they literally get energetically amplified with your
Yep.
emotion. Emotions do not determine outcome. They do not determine specificity in what an intention is. It does not paint a picture. Your thoughts do. So your
Yep.
thoughts are the deciding factor of your consciousness of what you want and what you would like something to happen. What does it look like? What does it feel like? What's it going to be? What is it? Your emotions are the mood that you associate with that intention, with that visualization, that either decreases the chances of it manifesting quickly or increases the chances of manifesting quickly. What are we talking about by manifestation? Because this word is used all the time. We're absolutely talking about the basic quantum physics. We're talking about entanglement. We're talking about the onlooker effect. We're talking about Bell's theorem. We're talking about the the split, the double slit experiment. All of the work that occurred and people win Nobel Prizes for 120 years ago, including Einstein, Niels Bohr, Heisenberg, uh, um, Schrodinger. There are many scientists. Many of them went on to work at the Manhattan Project to build the first atomic bomb. Without quantum physics, without notions of something significant called entanglement, you can't make integrated circuits or computers. Uh, you can't send a satellite up into the atmosphere and have it orbit. You really can't do any kind of aeronautical stuff. You really need that math. You really need that science. You have to understand what happens. If you're a scientist, if you're trying to build any of these things, if you're in industry, the industries that I've just described, you absolutely have to rely on the non-contested science, which is quantum mechanics, quantum physics. It's the same thing, same word, same thing, different words.
So let's go into quantum mechanics a little bit. Let me tell you my interest here. So, you
Sure.
know, I think I think um I think action is the real theme of what you're looking at on my so what you're looking at and what Jim's looking at is my YouTube channel and the listing of uploads, the videos. So if you go down, you're just gonna see different videos. You'll see the meaning casts. You'll see the talent show. You'll see different shorter clips. See the baptism and things like that. So this whole feed, this whole platform, I guess you called it, is about action, right? Because before I started this, it was 2 years of you know really kind of tuning the mind to get to that point, to step out into that much discomfort, right? And good little podcast platform, I guess. I don't know. Transformate life transformation, expose that, see what happens. That's for me. It was a big
Yeah.
step, right? So 2 years prior to that, it was mentally preparing for it. So I feel like that's kind of the tone of the world, right? Consuming, preparing, consuming, consuming, consuming for so long. Everybody as they pass their day, you had to build, had to contribute in some very meaningful way. And it usually had to do towards building something. If it was, not physically building something, building the environment in the house to take care of people or the hut, right? I mean, I'm talking everybody was doing something. But the rate of consumption today versus the almost total production type lifestyle um, that happened that we lived in before. Now we're just kind of raw consumers, right? Gluttonous consumption. There's
Totally.
really not a lot of there's really not a lot of production going on out there. So it's a matter of I went on a 2 year somewhat pretty focused um, journey into kind of understanding the mind, understanding my mind and my emotions, and you know, getting to the point, right, where there's less fear on how you engage the world, right? And when you're engaging, listen, we're all going to be consuming in some way, but you have to be producing because that's really what you're called to do, right? No, I don't think anybody's called to consume. People are called
That's great. You're absolutely right. I love to.
to produce, right?
Well,
So we get into your metaphysics here. This is my interest because it's the real people are good at consuming, right? So when I break down into simplest terms, what's really kind of um, the consumption to use, it's not been just this. This is the highlight over the last several months, and I'm going to put it up there as the most transformative. Um, the Bible and prayer, taking in words, taking in thoughts, the Bible, prayer, creating thoughts, having intentions, gratitude, thinking of other people. These are the things I try to fill my mind with when I'm not producing or empathizing with somebody or engaging somebody, I guess I should say. Um, so the real
I
thing is
love that.
action. The real thing is action, right? So if I could do it, everybody could do it. Everybody's good at consuming, and so everybody can consume something better. I'm assuming. So if we can get to that point, then it's like great, but then you still got to get people to act, right? So I'm interested in the action part. You're talking about
I,
metaphysics. What the
well,
hell are
I'm
you?
sorry. Yes,
What the
I want
hell
to
are
get
you
back.
talking about,
I want
James?
to absolutely. I'm talking about conventional physics, physics science that is not contested, that's established, that is taught to PhDs, to masters and graduate students. This is I'm just trying to explain to people that um, what goes on in your head literally becomes reality, either instantly or at some point. Um, and I was about to talk, and I mentioned thoughts create what it is, emotions amp it up with velocity, and action is is your part, is a person, is the subject's part, role, is the subject's role in this manifestation process. So when we hear about, so and I think that it is vitally important to think about all three things together. Thought plus emotion equals action. These are the three components. This is, now I'm getting into sacred knowledge. Okay. Action on its own, yeah, we can discuss that. But at the end of the day, all of us are trying to become integrated people. We're trying to become self actualized. We're trying to become fearless. We're trying to get back to the unity that we once all had by, first of all, noticing that we're all connected and then doing and saying the things that would help the whole. So you mentioned contributing, prayer, the Bible. These are phenomenal activities. These are tremendous. These are the kinds of positive things that when a conscious being uses it in their head, watch out, because really powerful stuff starts to happen. Coincidences start to happen. Um, let me, I want to talk about action too, and I want to talk about it in a very, very concrete way,
Okay.
more pragmatically than usual. So, uh, and just follow this, right? So last week we were talking about, it was the anniversary of 9/11, and, I really wasn't prepared for that. I kind of spoke very off the cuff about things. I've been, of course, I've been thinking about this stuff for 20 years, but from the anniversary, and I know I shared a lot of that. But, a lot of people were continued to talk about that after 9/11. People continue to talk about it and ask me about my story and what I knew, and that experience and what I learned subsequently. And um, here's the bottom line, because not everybody was there on that day. Not everybody lived in New York City. Not everybody was downtown. Not everybody was 1 block away. Not everybody was 500 feet up in the air on the same horizontal level as the Tower 2 bombing, or the Tower 2, whatever you want to call it. And I'll tell you, I've learned two things. I learned, number one, you have to get control of your adrenaline for the next time. And then you also have to reach out to your neighbors, because your local community, the people that physically live near you, that's going to be your refuge. Those people are your tools to successfully get through the next 9/11, because this shit is not over. That's pretty, I mean, I think that would be
That's
pretty
action.
interesting.
That's action.
Action is what I'm talking about, reaching out to your neighbors. Now, yeah, on the surface, oh, okay, that sounds pretty interesting. But let's face it, right? The entities that are running this show are not doing a very good job. Uh, I don't know a single person who thinks that government is useful or does a good job. I know a lot of people who are afraid of saying stuff like that. I know a lot of people who will do
Isn't that
nothing.
crazy? Isn't that crazy?
It's a consequence of how some people are waking up and others are not. And when you integrate thought, emotion with action, you're woken up. That's what happens. Those are the three elements. There are no other elements that are primary to your being. Those are the three. I mean, you could say spirit is in there, you know, body is in there. Okay. But this is what's taught. When we start to talk about what is the sacred knowledge that has been held from you. Now, this is a long pause because I debate every single week about whether or not I want to talk about this. And in the middle of a show, it's a very good opportunity buried in the midst of a 50 or 60-minute program. It's a very safe location for me to say a couple of things. And then next week, I'll say a couple of things also buried in the midst of the podcast. Here's what I want to tell you. We're talking about action. Action, turns out, is one of three pillars in human consciousness: thought, emotion, and action. When they're integrated and you have no conflict mentally over those three things, stuff happens. It begins with coincidences. Physical reality starts to materialize. You realize, wait a minute, I was just thinking that. How the hell did that just appear on TV? Or why did that person just call me? Or how did that happen in my work? Like, that was exactly what I was just thinking of. How did the information that was in my head get transmitted into the atoms of my experience that then all of a sudden decided to orchestrate themselves into this experience that I'm living, if that makes any sense? Well,
A lot of sense.
there is one thing that explains it all. And I guess I know I kind of build this up a lot. I get very dramatic. I almost said it a moment ago, and then I paused again, but now I'm ready to say it. If there's one thing that people need to pay attention to right now, what I'm about to say, you don't need to know anything else. The law of cause and effect. Now, there are people listening right now who are jotting my name down and saying, oh, fuck, he has knowledge about that. He's going to blow the whistle. He's going to explain everything right now. I'm not going to explain everything right now. I would love to. But this is something that's big. It explains everything. It has been hidden from you. And the part that I'm mostly blown away by is how long it took me to figure this stuff out. I can't believe it. If it wasn't for 9/11, I mean, I knew that stuff was weird already, but I just kind of assumed that it was corporate politics, money, the quest for power, all these things. And then I just kind of dismissed it. And my psychological self said, not important, not part of my, I don't need to get out of my comfort zone. And, I was one of those early pioneers. I mean, I was asking the internet questions. I was typing faster than you can believe. I mean, I'm a fast typer. I was doing queries all day long, every single day at my job, starting in 1996. Every single day, right up until today. But there was a point by around 2011, 2012, 2013 or so, where the information on the internet basically all got compromised. The information was no longer correct. You can find all kinds of stuff out there now that's just blatantly incorrect. Any of the hot topics that people say, oh, well, that's just yet another theory. It's, you deserve, you owe it to yourself to kind of look this stuff up. The law of cause and effect, basically every single action, every single event, every single thing that happens has a cause. We all know this. We know about the third law of thermodynamics with Isaac Newton. If you throw a brick off the back of a sled, the sled's going to move forward. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Newton actually didn't give away all the details. He was pretty clever in that regard. He, in some cases, did not publish some of his discoveries for fear of, let's just put it this way. People were not getting burned at the stake in the late 1600s, but they did for many hundreds of years for knowledge of the law of cause and effect. Who were they burned by? The Catholic Church. How do I know this? I've studied it for 20 years. I've looked at the primary sources. I looked at all of the modern approaches to manifestation, quantum physics, magic, the Kabbalah, every occult science that exists. I've spent decades making absolutely sure that I understood exactly what was going on. This is not information that they're going to teach you, they, meaning the 1%. It's going to teach you in school. You're not going to hear about this on the mainstream media. It is tightly held information. It is universal information. This information, the law of cause and effect, and I've not really gotten into really much more other than every event has a cause and an event is an effect. And in fact, an event will then become a cause of some other event. And it's a chain reaction, begins with birth of anything, not just, the birth of a country, the death of a country, the birth of a person, the death of a person. Cause and effect is the fundamental law that governs all finite material activity and objects. Everything that
All
you're
right.
looking around at, there are very few things that you can put your finger on that are infinite. Go ahead, Joe. What was that?
Yeah. So give me an example, right? I know you said there's nothing, right? But go
Right.
ahead.
So if let's see, what would be a very good example? If
Well, I mean, you said it's everything, right? And I
yep,
agree with you, right? I
yeah, it
agree that,
totally is.
and I think,
Uh,
I think I get where you're going with this cause and effect, but I think you are being a little bit ominous here. Let's put a little bit,
yeah,
maybe
yeah.
a little bit of a point, a little bit of
Let me,
color on it.
yeah, I guess where I don't mean to sound, I really do not want to sound ominous. I think I would agree with you. But my awakening really kind of started the day of 9/11, and I made absolutely sure that I discovered I ran down every single inconsistency that happened on that day, and a, it's the blessing is that I feel that I discovered what all people want to discover. The law of cause and effect is also known as natural law, which I think is a very good word, if not better. Another word that is identical, is synonymous, and I use it very hesitantly because it has so much baggage and it means so many different things to different people, is karma. Okay. I'll start there. The karma from an Eastern religion perspective is translated as the word action in the ancient language of Sanskrit. Eastern religion meaning Buddhism and Hinduism. Let's start there. Tibet and India. And for every action that you commit, it's either morally good or morally wrong, and you will receive in return a like amount of whatever it is that you put out there. Quantum physics does describe this, at least on a subatomic level.
All right, so it's about directing it then, right?
It is about
So
directing it. It's absolutely
yeah,
about directing it.
so that's where I get into. So yeah, so rather than leave it hang with you, um, consumption is a bad way to direct it, all right? At
Consumption
least
is thoughtless.
gluttonous.
Consumption is
Yeah,
just thoughtless. There's, go ahead.
it's for sustenance, right?
It's
Um,
survival based.
yeah, yeah, and like I think people are consuming sex, right? Maybe this is a good example, in all types of ways, right? I think because of what you think, what you put in your mind is what you take into the world. If you're consuming porn and then you're having sex with people, you're probably not having sex with that person, right? You're like, it's not you're not building anything. You're consuming that person, right? And I don't think I don't think it's supposed to be like that. I think it's always supposed to be building, right? You have to be building, right? So I feel like in everything we do, we're just training ourselves to just be this disgusting, slimy, consumptive thing.
Yeah,
But
the
we're
rat.
energy, we're light,
The,
we're
yeah,
different than that. So we got to direct not just what we do, right? Because then you go towards pleasure. You got to direct thoughts, actions, Bible, prayer, thoughts, emotions, Bible, prayer, actions, consumption or produce. You're going to consume or produce. Consume for sustenance, produce to build. We are building people. Building people.
that's right.
We're building people, building people.
Uh, yes, absolutely, absolutely right. Um, if good stuff comes in, good stuff comes out. The
And
cycle.
I'm real picky. Yeah, I'm really picky on consumption now, right? Like I don't even like sports. And I'm not down on people that consume sports. but it better be like a fine wine where you're an alcoholic. So anyway, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's I mean, we're talking about the vicious cycle of consuming and producing, and people are born into this world, and that's immediately what starts happening. The emphasis on making is really de-emphasized. The emphasis on action, I don't even hear about it.
But how can you act if you're not in the line with your thoughts and emotions? I mean, it's impossible.
It's
Or at
true.
least you can't.
You can act. I mean, you can. That's really the human experience, is that we act and we make decisions all the time, and we have contested thoughts about it. You know, in theory, if you are trying to decide, is this right or is this wrong, the conventional the conventional understanding is that your consciousness, however a psychologist would describe that, is the mechanism by which your body makes a decision, right? Between something that is morally right, morally wrong. How do you decide? Well, that's the job of your consciousness. The phrase higher consciousness would be when you lean more towards selfless service and you realize that the needs of others are as important as yours, because we're all connected, because we're all one. And instead, we find ourselves producing during the day at our jobs, making money, and then we're holding a barbecue, or we are consuming fast food, uh, uh, crap on TV, um, and this is not life. You know, it
We're
does
not
serve.
building people. We're not building people. Like
No,
I'm
it's
not,
no.
and I'm yeah. I mean, if we're with people, we're on our phone, right? Like I see parents as and a sweet person, right? I had a great conversation with this woman today, right? Whatever. But for the first 15 minutes of being around her and her like a 2-year old or something son, she was consuming her phone and talking on it and looking at it, which is fine. Everybody's got a life and stuff like that, right? But and even when she was and I was like with my son, right? And even when she was off the phone, she was really drawn to me, right? She was really drawn to consume me, right? To like
Hmm.
be with me, right? Like I was I
Mhm.
was surprised that like at one point she picked up a conversation where we had left it off because so much time had passed. And I was actually wondering, hey, is she going to bring it back here? Right? Or are we in a new situation? Right? Did she go? And she never left me, when she was attending to her son. She came right back
Hmm.
to exactly where she was. So I'm really attentive to these things right now. And I don't want to sound critical of this person. I guess I am being, but not of this person, but of that type of behavior. Right? Did that
I don't
make
know if I'm
sense,
following
Jim? Do
you.
you
So
see what
you're
I'm
saying
saying?
that there was a woman in your life and she left and now she's back and she picked up the pieces
Yeah,
right where you
yeah. I
left
mean,
off.
yeah. There's only one woman in my life. Her name's Magdalena. This morning with my son at the playground, um, enjoying time with my son, a woman walks onto the playground with her 2.5-year-old son, and she's consuming um, her phone. Right, her
Yep.
son's at a background. She's consuming with her eyes and her thumb. She's scrolling, and she's talking, right? And this was about 15, 20 minutes. But then after that, then she started to consume me, right? All of a sudden,
Ah,
we start crossing paths as our kids are running around, and now she's talking to me, and blah, 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 blah. And at one point, I noticed that she had to go attend to her son, whatever. He wanted to go do something. They were away for a little bit, and she stopped mid thought right before that. And I said to myself, is she going to come back? And when we see each other, like when we cross paths again and start talking again, if we start talking again, is she going to come back to this point? Right? Is this conversation important to her? Right?
right.
Is what's going on in my head. And sure
Right.
as heck, she comes back where I start talking again, however, and she goes right back to where she left off. And I guess what I'm saying is
Yeah.
she never engaged her. So she did. She was being very loving. She was great. She's a great mother. I don't want to sound, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
but
I do.
zero, yeah, zero criticism for this person. Lovely, 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 lovely. Doing everything she can for herself. But what I noticed was somebody who was a consumer, and even she was drawn to start consuming. Right when the phone wasn't there, easy, low hanging fruit, was the other adult. Right, and I happened to be there. She was really caught up in the conversation and stuff like that. And I'm at a point in my life where I recognize I may have been there before, right? And
Yeah. Yeah, I think we all have.
anyway, that's yeah, that's where we're at, man. Anyway, I don't know how I got onto that little thing, and then I repeated
Um,
myself and went in
well,
more
no, no.
detail.
I mean, we got onto this because you're describing a different kind of. You're talking about really the effects of the cause called consume and produce, right? If the effect is that it's you end up living a meaningless life, you end up not knowing who you are, you end up not appreciating others, you end up not noticing that another one in the room might have hurt feelings. People who engage on such a shallow and superficial level are not only doing a disjustice, an injustice to themselves, but also to you. And for people like yourself who are woken up, who are, making the effort to proactively discover and hold a baptism for themselves, at an adult age, that's a great, I mean, clearly you're paying attention. And that's really what I think the purpose of this podcast is. I think that it attracts people that are noticing that there's something that's not right. They know that they're consuming and they're producing and they want more, and they feel their soul is hungry. They feel the emptiness inside. They're lonely. They're depressed and anxious and don't necessarily know why. And it's probably because of loneliness or because of not being engaged. And so I've just kind of I just kind of described a variety of symptoms. I would imagine that the people who listen to us are tuned in to learn more about, because I think that we have answers. You know, I want to talk about music for a second. If a person is
Yeah, I
knowingly
mean, I was just yeah. Go
caught, well,
ahead.
let me ask you the question. So for a person who's caught up in a consume and produce cycle, and I think that people understand by now what we're talking about. That on the weekend, uh, people are not necessarily uh, building a group sculpture, but they might have people over for dinner and we're going to eat and we're going to drink and we're going to eat and we're going to watch TV and we're going to eat and we're going to drink and we're going to watch more TV. Well, we're going to talk, and those are all very nice things. But at the end of the day, what are you doing with your mind, with your hands? That's going to feed your soul. So that's so there you go, Joe. So we're talking about the action that comes as a consequence of those causes. Action is an
You said you want
effect.
to talk about you said you want to talk about music, and the reason I almost jumped in,
Yeah,
I was just gonna say great because I
yeah,
was just thinking of you're talking about where people are and kind of maybe where they find this podcast and what it's about. David Chen, right, the gentleman on I think it was the last podcast, before we spoke, right? I think I did three that week. David was in the middle, and I think he's a 30-year-old entrepreneur, has his own business to help people in developing countries get their hands on drugs that are actually drugs. He told a story of meeting a woman who was um, married to a famous athlete, and the athlete's no longer with us now because he received counterfeit medication, right?
wait a minute.
Um,
David Chen is dead
no, 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 no. David Chen is the
last
gentleman
week.
I spoke with. Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah. He's the
Who
entrepreneur.
died?
Just somebody, he anecdotally, somebody in Nigeria who would be known, people in Nigeria would know her husband, all right, um, passed away because of counterfeit medication. So David's
Wow.
company,
Oh,
the reason I bring him up, I talked to him. He was on the podcast was a couple weeks ago, and that's exactly the story he told. Right, is he lost his father at a young age, and it really had him wake up at that moment, right? And then even after waking up, it was hard. The work was hard, so he went back to sleep for a few more years until something else happened.
wow. Okay.
What was the next thing that happened? His friend was in a low place, needed to come out. What did he use? He discovered meaning wave.
Huh.
Okay.
Fantastic.
That's how David
Fantastic.
Chen and I had met because his friend comes out of this slump and he's like, well, let me go ahead and dive into this music where if I'm going to consume something, right? If I'm going to consume music,
Right.
if I'm going to have passive time where I'm folding the laundry, preparing dinner, working out, right? What am I consuming? What am I doing? Let me put on this meaning wave where I'm going to get repetitive, um, you know, uplifting, empowering thoughts with, really great music. I'm going to reprogram my mind.
Absolutely.
I'm going to reprogram my mind. I'm going to literally reprogram my mind by just listening to this music and the teachers over that are speaking over top of that music,
You
right? And
know, I want to give a
that's what the meaning wave is,
the
right?
meaning
So
wave. It's like, oh, I feel depressed,
and that's
lonely.
not me, by the way, just so you know, Jim. That's Akira the Don is has created this genre of music called meaning.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
So
Okay.
that's how I found David. Is we were both connoisseurs, consumers of meaning wave.
Oh, all right. Wow. So meaning wave is like the antidote to a phony life. And how to get out of it. It's the ladder. It's the apparatus to get
Well,
you
it's
out.
something. It's you talk about thought and
Yeah,
emotions,
it's
right?
something.
So it's a way
It's
to
one
it's
of
reprogramming your brain,
it's
right?
one of
Helping
yeah.
you that
Here,
point of
I'll tell you
action,
something.
getting
Here's a
things
here's a
aligned.
great
I mean,
example.
they have to be in line, right? You just mentioned it. Thoughts and emotions have to be in line, then you can act, right? So where was David? Where was his friend? Where was I? Stuck. Knew you weren't in the
Right,
right place, right?
right,
Something was
right,
haywire. You found yourself in a major was it fight or flight, right?
right.
So
Exactly.
um, and you made the decision to fight this time. Now you need a new guide. You got to get your thoughts and emotions in line, and this is something to do to reprogram them. I didn't start with Meaning Wave, right? I started with books and practices and you know therapies, and you know the rest is history. Getting back into writing, we talk about this on, I've blogged about this, talked about this on other podcasts, but it's all there, all to be talked about later as well. But there's a whole thing that goes into this. You have to be actively, reprogramming with new thoughts, new emotions. Train these things, develop these things. Then you get
You
back
have
on
no
track.
idea. You're like it's like a what you're saying is like a glass of cold water that I'm drinking on a hot day. You're filling me up. I'm not even kidding. Um, the notion that people can learn how to rewire their brains is so important. We call it we meaning whatever the medical community, not me, but call it neuroplasticity, right? And this was not even really understood or known 20, 30 years ago. It was like, okay, if you have a brain injury or if you have a certain set of beliefs, we're not going to change and we're not going to teach an old dog new tricks, and we're not going to that brain is not going to recover. Well, that's just not true. It's not true. You absolutely use your conscious thought process, your mind, in order to modify, change, or keep the same thought patterns, the same thoughts that you always have. Um, Here's a great example, very pragmatic. We are cleaning out our basement. We need to do a purge. We need to clean out. I got to bring some new stuff in. There's nowhere to put it. I need to stick it in the basement. Well, it's a very packed basement. We meaning my wife and I, we dread this job. We have that's another reason why it's just packed. Something comes in the house, don't know where it should go. It's replacing something else. Stick it down in the basement. We got to fix this. We got to change the basement. Well, I don't know if you've ever heard of a wonderful woman who has a broadcast television series. Her name is Marie Kondo, and I'll have to look up the name of her show, but she is a specialist in home uh, cleaning. She's an organizing consultant from Japan, and she's written a lot of bestsellers and has the TV show. And she has a very simple and specific model for how people can clean their basement or their house that's
Oh, I
filled
can't
with
wait.
clutter.
I can't
So you,
wait. What's her name
you
again?
break
Can
it
you say it
into
again? Say
it's
her name
her
again.
her last name is Kondo, K like kilometer, Ondo. First name Marie, and she's an organizing consultant, which is a terrific word for how she has systematized a process that anybody can follow that will help you to get your house clean. Basically, you're breaking down all of the stuff in your house into four categories. The first are clothes. Most people really hoard clothes. Most people don't donate their clothes, or your clothing starts to really start to come out of the closet. She says, okay, take all of your clothes, put them on the bed, literally every piece of clothing in a box, in a closet, stick it on your bed. This TV show, you should see people have mountains of clothing on top of their bed. The first thing that happens, the second component, the second category would be keepsakes. We all have a lot of keepsakes. I've got so many things that I held on to from my kids' childhood, and they have really good memories. And some of these things I want to keep, and other things are really I don't want to keep, or I can't. The space is too costly now. I need to not hold on to it. Do I have two of these? So then a third category, um, I'm going to forget the other two categories, but basically,
So
uh,
there's four category.
there's
There's four
four
categories.
categories. I don't
What's
want
the
to look it up.
first one? The first one's clothes. The
Well, we
second
have
one's what?
clothing. The next one is keepsakes. Here, I'll see if I can find it really quick. And
Good old fashioned.
but you watch this TV show, right? And she says, you know, the reason why you're taking your clothing out is because and sticking it on your bed is because you're going to start to notice how much clothing you actually have. The
Hmm.
literal activity of moving the clothing out of the closet and onto the bed, you cannot help but notice how many clothes that you have. And then all of a sudden, your body starts to change. Your emotions will start to be automatically cultivated to say to yourself, oh, it doesn't feel good. I've got way too many clothes. It doesn't feel good. And then you have the thought process, thanks to Marie Kondo, hey, you know what? I can actually pare this down. I can pare this down. And what she says, I'll just talk about the clothes because I know it better.
No,
She
she's
said,
not. I listen. I could write this story. It's not Marie Kondo. This is what I do, man. I love it. This is
you
exactly
do the
how I.
same thing?
This is how I get rid of. This is how I pare down my clothes. Like when I get to pare down my clothes, I get them all out. I look at them, and I'm seeing the emotional states. Right. Anyway, go ahead. I love it.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, I found the
Give me
other
the. Go
categories.
ahead.
So,
Go ahead.
so,
Okay.
so,
Good.
and then she says, only keep the items of clothing that are going to bring you great joy. What an interesting piece of criteria. I never would have thought
That's
of that
not a
on my
good
own.
one though. There's a lot of people like me who can get emotionally attached to things.
Very,
So you got to make.
all of
Yeah.
us, all of us.
Yeah.
The other
So I guess
categories
you have to
are
really look at that word joy. But anyway, go ahead.
joy. Oh, I've tried that. It really, if you're asking yourself the question and you're holding up a piece of clothing, you can actually, without
That's the
being,
emotion, not
yeah,
not
you can
reminiscence, not
absolutely,
whatever. Yeah, joy.
you can get a determination and then that helps you to decide very easily about what to keep and what to retain, what to throw away, what to donate. The other categories are books. Most of us have
Mm.
tons of books. I know I
Oh
do.
yeah, I do
And then
too.
and
Yeah.
then the last category, and this is pretty broad, is paper, documents. We have tons of it. We have tons of it. Do we go through it? Not really. I mean, of course, a lot of it is electronic, and that does not exactly count because it's easier to just buy a new hard drive. I may regret end up saying that, but because I think it's important to be tidy in all aspects of one's experience. But at the end of this 30-minute program, every person that watches this program is completely motivated to bust down the door in their bedroom and get to that clothes closet and start to go through those documents because she just kind of simplifies it and it's no longer overwhelming. So here's an example of how to uh, inculcate action, how to rewire your brain. Look, I up until I saw the Marie Kondo TV shows, and I'm sure that there's plenty of it on YouTube. I didn't think that it was really possible. Like, when am I going to get to it? Like, I need to not be working. I need to be retired. I need to have all the time that I'm going to need in order to do this stuff. And it's not true. That's basically a blocker that your psyche has created so you don't get off the couch, so you stay in your comfort zone, so that you don't approach the unknown and you can just stick with survival and pleasure. Meanwhile, your soul is suffering. Your soul needs that space. You know you need that space. When you open it up, even if you do a single day's work on your basement, you'll notice visibly how much extra space you have in those aisles, and you will feel so much better. And so thought, emotion, and action, when they are unified, meaning when you don't have any conflicting thoughts about, oh, maybe I should do this, but maybe I shouldn't. After you've gotten through that, after you've decided, this is my intention, this is what I want to do, you can amplify it with emotion by thinking about all the good things, about having appreciation. I know that's a big one for you, about having gratefulness. It's a little bit different. You can consider what the differences are. It's a very good exercise. You're crowding your mind with positivity that is functional, pragmatic, and helpful. Because everything in your mind ultimately shows up as an experience because of the law of cause and effect that I'm actually intentionally not totally going
And
into.
listen, let's end on that because I spoke about my encounter with this woman at the All Abilities playground in Phoenixville, and she said something when we were talking about her boys. She's got two boys and a little girl on the way, and both the boys are, rough and tumble, of course. And she said,
The two
yeah,
boys are what?
the two boys are rough and tumble, right?
Yeah.
They throw each other around.
Yeah.
Even though the one's two and the other's four, whatever, that's what they do. And they stand off. She even said when they see other boys, they do this, and she physically demonstrated it. She put her arms out she made fists and like kind of like um, I don't know how you would say it, like put her arms out to the side like she was flexing, right?
Okay.
Um, and then went but like not in the air, right? Like just like to her side, right? Like
Yeah.
just kind of puffed
Okay.
out a little bit. Yeah, yeah, just kind of puffed out a little bit, with fists, like and growl, right? And that's cute,
Okay.
right? Okay, yeah, that's what boys do. Ha ha ha. That's what they do with boys. And she says, I'm hoping that they'll do something different with girls. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm sure that they'll be different with the sweet little baby girl, at least for a while. Ha ha ha. Right? Small talk, right? At
Hmm.
least so you think, Jim. So you think. So you think. Okay. Because what happens within 5 minutes? Our boys are running around the jungle gym area, and they encounter each other really for the first time. My boy is 16 months. This kid's about two and a half. So there's a little bit of a gap. And
Okay.
anyway, um, my son's standing on the top of the platform. This kid just started climbing up the ladder, and my son's like looking like he wanted to go down. And I'm like, hey, hold on, why don't we back up? Let little man come on up. Little man comes up, stands toe to toe with Holden, clenches his fist, puffs his arms out a little bit, makes himself big, scrunches his face, and goes, "Rawr." So
Right.
what you do, what you think, it,
Yeah. I
it
mean,
always, it
there's really a lot.
always appears. It always appears. It's just a matter of whether or not you're paying.
I want before we hang up, I wanted to just tie in the beginning. I had mentioned, get control of your adrenaline and reach out to your neighbors because those are really the people that you will end up relying on. And even if we don't get along with all our neighbors. Now, I moved to a new neighborhood here a few years ago, and we have a big tick problem. Um, uh, you know, uh, Lyme disease and ticks are a very prevalent epidemic actually now throughout the United States. It used to be limited to a small area around Lyme, Connecticut, back in the 80s, and now those ticks have reproduced, and now the spirochetes that live inside those ticks that cause Lyme disease and other kinds of diseases have are now in all of the different species of ticks, and it's really hard to go into the woods now. So we've got a few acres of woods behind us that we like to walk the dogs on trails and things. And I've had Lyme disease a few times. And if you've had that and you didn't know, and it started to, and you didn't know you had it, and it got worse, and you weren't quite sure, and then all of a sudden you figured it out 6 months later, and you're really in the hole because it's a very advanced disease at that point, which is what happened to me. Um, and you were able to get through it, you would I mean, for me, I had to make absolutely sure that this would never happen to me again. Because I'm surrounded by woods. And I thought, okay, well, long story short, I developed my own uh, tick repellent out of essential oils. Essential oils are the distilled flowers and other parts of plants that we use in oils that you can rub on yourself or can be, for topical healing or conditions, as well as inhaling. This is what aromatherapy is about. Um, and it's also kind of the organic or clean version of a lot of kitchen cleaners and things. Basically, you're using the distilled essence of a plant. They often smell, if not all of them, smell fantastic and serve a wide use of different purposes. And there are essential oils that are derived from geranium, lavender, rose, uh, citrus, uh, uh, cedar. There's about 10 that I work with, and essentially I mix that up with almond oil, and then I mix it with 2 gallons of water, and I create a spray, which is a tick repellent spray. And in fact, it's funny because I've seen the near exact same thing sold for $10 a pop in different stores or on Amazon. But it's one of the, I mean, I'm an open source guy, right? So it's all about making and doing it with the help of of
Building.
others. And so the reason why I bring this up is because I didn't know my neighbors out here. How do I get to know them? If that's one of the most, if, in
Mm,
addition to controlling my adrenaline in the next
mm.
catastrophe, how do I get to know my neighbors? Well, I just went over there. I sprayed my own lawn, and anybody who came out, I said, hey, check this out. I'm spraying my lawn so that it will repel ticks. Well, we can keep them in the woods. How about if I do your lawn? Great conversation starter. Who doesn't want free help? I mean, most of the time, right? Genuinely needed help. What a great way to meet my neighbors. I became really good friends with my neighbors. Everybody around here is fearful of ticks. Uh, you can't not. I mean,
Here too.
the alternative is to stay inside. No,
Yeah.
no, no. That's not what we have to do. We have to live our lives. We have to help each other. Um, and so I think that that's a really good example, not for me to kind of praise myself, but for other people who are lonely. Think about the problem in your life outside of loneliness that you would like to get solved. Uh, Completely suspend your judgment. Make absolutely sure you don't dismiss it and say, "Oh, well, there's nothing I can do about it," or "I'll get to it next week." You have to fight that. That's the thought process that you're trying to rewire. Okay, so start with, here I am in the present. Where are my feet? Take a breath. Take three. Think to yourself, "Oh, what problems do I really have that I would love to get fixed?" And then just go for it in your mind. Play, like use your imagination like it's a game. Use daydream, make a fantasy about what it would look like after that thing has been fixed, after the problem has been fixed. If you're going to paint a picture, you do not paint a picture of the problem. You do not paint a picture of how awful life is or how much things suck because of the problem. That's not, just take my word for it. You could do the 20 years of experimentation yourself, and you could read all of the primary sources from the Rosicrucians, from the Masons, from the Hermetics, from the Egyptians, from the alchemists, from the Arabic alchemists. You could read the information that has been held onto and kept close to the vest from the Roman Catholics. If you did all that work, or if you study paganism, okay, you will eventually discover the law of cause and effect. You will eventually discover that you can fix any problem. You begin with getting present, having a non-conflicting attitude, being peaceful in your mind. Then you give great thanks. If you're not thankful, you got to start there because that's a problem. But if you are, you can think of things that you're thankful for. It's going to raise your energy level. Specifically, it's going to increase your frequency, meaning the waves become shorter, meaning the energy that we really don't discuss, the energy that keeps us all connected, the stuff that causes atoms to stay bonded to each other, okay, is influenced by your thoughts and feelings. That's just how it is. And we can discuss more of that. I don't want to get too much more into the quantum physics, and we're probably going to run out of time. But the point is, think of that problem. Think about what it would be like when the problem is completed. What would you be saying to your friend? What would this podcast sound like, Joe, if I had just sprayed the lawn of all 7 people that surround me? Particularly in October, which is when the ticks come out again. They come out in the spring and they come out. There's a cycle. If you look it up, the life cycle. You can go to my page on Facebook, Tick Evict. But the name of the DIY tick repellent is called Tick Evict. Although, Facebook was just a convenient place to stick that. But what will happen next is that you will start to notice coincidences. The things that you need, whether it's money or whether it's a 2-gallon sprayer bottle, or whether it is essential oils or whatever it is that you need that you've not already obtained, will show up, will be given to you by a friend, will arrive in the mail for no reason, will be right on that shelf at the impulse aisle in the grocery store, and you'll be reminded, oh yeah, I actually do need this. I want to work on my tick repellent, and I'm going to tell my neighbors about it, and I'm going to have more efficacy. I'm going to have more success keeping the ticks away and the Lyme disease down, because all of us, all 7 neighbors, are pushing the ticks back into the forest, into the deep part of the forest. So I wanted to kind of throw that out because I think that's a terrific pragmatic example of changing one's wiring. I mean, how many people even think that it's possible to control Lyme disease? Right now, our medical establishment, the one percenters are telling us, well, you have to take doxycycline, and which is the strongest antibiotic available today, outside of intravenous. Uh, and by the way, the 1% medical community is not interested. They've said, well, this is going to cause a public health issue if we're constantly prescribing antibiotics for Lyme disease. That's going to make the ticks resilient. Well, guess what? The ticks are already completely taking over. It's a little late to worry about that. Anybody who's sick, anybody who has a symptom of Lyme disease, I don't have to get into that, we're out of time. Absolutely, run over to your first care, your prompt care, your easy to go to place that you don't require an appointment, and get yourself that doxycycline. Make sure you get the 3 week and not just 2 days worth dose. You'll take care of that problem. You'll rewire your brain. You will begin to realize that there's a lot that's missing out there. There's a lot that's missing. There are solutions to ticks. They're absolutely, I mean, the Cornell University, who would not reply to any of my emails, decided to come out with a product. The tubes that are filled with cotton that, the mice get into, and that does work, but it's not going to prevent ticks from being everywhere on your property.
So maybe that's where we can take it, because listen, this is all about examples.
Yeah.
I want to maybe maybe let's end it there, Jen, because you say like, hey, maybe that's just something I'm sharing, a little example. That's all we have is examples, because if we don't see good examples, we don't have anything to build off of, and we are building people, right? So that's a great example. You can affect massive change by kind of doing what you said, right? Solve a problem that's.
Oh, and I think that I might sometimes get
stuff.
too much into the theoretical. So I really appreciate it when you call me out and you ask for better examples. You asked me for an example of cause and effect. I would say this. I would say that when you go to the gym with an intention to make yourself healthy and you start to work out on those weights, that is the cause. The cause is the feeling of unhealth, the feeling of physical weakness, and your desire to want to change it. The effect, the thing that comes after that cause, is your action of pumping that weight, going to the gym, running on that elliptical, and taking care of business. So you've got a precursor, and then you've got a successor. In other words, you've got something that causes something that is the seed, and then you've got the fruit. You've got something that starts, something that ends, something that begins, something that's going to be finished, something that's born, something that dies. A thought in your head becomes an action eventually, or non-action. So all things that exist, if you can wrap your mind around that, because it's hard to imagine things that don't exist, but every single thing that exists, and that's pretty much everything in your visual field, everything, right, that you've ever known exists somehow, one way or the other, is born and it will die. That means that it was born of something. Its birth was an effect from a different cause. If you really want to make change, you must obey this law and make the changes to the cause. When an effect manifests, it's already true. It already exists. It is not changeable the same way as if you were to prevent it, or if you were to encourage it, if you were to work on the causal plane. So I hope the example
underscore that. Yeah, people underscore that. Jim, just drop that. It's a mic drop right there.
There you go, mic drop right there. You have to work on the cause. This is huge information. This is the stuff that the Catholic Church held on to for 1,000 years. They gathered all of the knowledge from the Egyptians, all of the knowledge that existed. They kept it in Rome, and then we were told that we are guilty of sin. And I know that you got baptized for a different reason, and I would love to hear more about that. But the information that we really need to have is ancient. It has been concealed, and it no longer has to be like that, because there was a period of time in the internet that many people, not just me, about 15 years, where all that information was not yet compromised, and the information was out there, and you could look up every single thing, and you can get the answer to every single question. And if you were wondering about weird things that had happened on 9/11 that day, you could get them all answered. It took me years took me a long time, because you had to constantly, compare and contrast. Is this story correct? Is this person lying? Do they have an agenda? Did this person get killed because of what they said? You work on the cause, and then you change the effect. And by doing those two things, you will have rewired your mind, and you'll be able to clean out your basement every single time.
Jim, let's leave it there, my friend. Let's call it a
Awesome.
show.
Wonderful, Joe. Great talking to you as always. Thanks again for doing this. It means a lot to everybody.